In today's video, we're talking about podcasting's hottest app right now, and that's the Descript app over at Descript.com. You have it right up here on the screen. You can get it for free. You can try it for free for $0 a month, and then you can move up into the creator plan for $15 a month, and then the pro plan for $30 a month, which is what I'm on, which is some of the things you'll see in today's video. This is a multifaceted tool. There's a lot that Descript is trying to do. It's constantly coming out with new features, reiterating and making itself better. So there's a lot to cover. I can't cover every single thing in this video. This video is already going to be pretty long today. What I want to start with is a pro and con. I'm going to start with the cons first, but we do a pro and con of what I feel about this program. Having used it now for over two months, and somebody who's been podcasting for 8 years, I've been using Adobe Audition for the last 5 years. When I started podcasting, I was using Audacity. And I want to balance some of the expectations from, a really mature app like an Adobe Audition. And then we have Descript, which is very new to the market and constantly changing and making new improvements. So keeping all of that stuff, within its context. So let's dive into the cons first. Some of the stuff I'm finding a little bit of friction with Descript. So I'm going to move through these points fairly quickly in order to save time to show you how I edit a show and really dive into some of these things that I'm talking about today. So its greatest weakness is also its greatest strength, and that is forgetting all about editing within tracks like we normally do in Adobe Audition or Audacity or GarageBand. And their unique angle is editing shows within a transcript, right? So that is the whole premise of Descript, is we're sort of moving in from editing down here in the tracks that you see down at the bottom of the screen and really crafting your story, your show, removing bits of elements by just highlighting text and hitting delete, and you're working through your editing model or workflow that way. And it takes a bit of a learning curve. So it's not super seamless right out of the gate. You definitely have to learn how Descript does it with any new app, of course. But I found this one to be, a little bit more rigid in terms of the workflow that they want you to follow. And then editing or adding things like layering in tracks, layering in ad reads, or, intros, outros of a show. You're placing it within the context of the transcription. So it's just a little different. It takes a little bit of getting used to. And some things just don't work 100% just yet. Next up is the removal of ums and ahs. This is also a pro, but also a con for me. I was really sold on this at the beginning. Like when I was looking at Descript, I was like, wow, I can remove all the filler words, the ums, the ahs. That sounds amazing. And if I run it right here, you can just see it quickly on the side screen. I can right click on this is the wrong composition. 1 second. Let me go. Yeah. So Matt and Corey, this is the entire episode I did recently with Corey Haynes. You can see it's finding all of these filler words, the ums, the ahs, the sort ofs, the I means, the you knows, like all of that stuff. And then the first few times I used this, I was like, this is amazing. I'm going to just one click to remove all of these words. But what happened was, for a 30-minute, 45-minute podcast, it's taking out a lot of audio. And it to the point where it just sounds like it's jumping too much, right? Because we're saying so many filler words that if you're removing it from all the points, it really disrupts the natural conversation. And what I had to do is dial back my expectation with that, and then use it just as sort of map markers or guidelines where I'll run it, I'll see where all these words are within the context of the transcript, and then I'll know whether or not I have to spend time really editing a show or editing a segment of the show. So if we look right here at Corey's example, he says, I mean, like, well, and what I do now is I just go through the transcript and I find the paragraphs that are densely populated with filler words, and I'll listen to that show or that paragraph, and depending on the flow of it, depending on the person's voice and the excitement, and depending on however they're speaking, I'll remove those points. I just don't use it as this auto removal. It's going to make my audio sound amazing, because it doesn't. Next up is the program's a little bit laggy. I'm using this right now on my 2016 MacBook Pro, 16 gigs of RAM. So yeah, it's fairly outdated. Of course, we have the new Apple M1s, which are crushing performance charts right now. I can't wait for this program to actually support M1. But if I zoom out a little bit of this timeline, you can see it's a little bit laggy. If I started making a more complex show, lots of edits, transitions, sounds, and effects and things like that, plus other elements of the app can just sometimes feel like it needs a lot of horsepower to run. If I grabbed an audio segment, I tried to move it around the timeline, oftentimes it'll either crash my Windows machine, which is very powerful. It's a machine I built last year, 16 gigs of RAM, new AMD Ryzen chip. It's a very powerful system, and even that lags sometimes. There's some crazy thunder and lightning right now, so my whole office is shaking. I can find it to be a little daunting in some points, but these are things that are quickly being fixed from the Descript team. Next up is the heavy UI of editing can just sometimes feel a little disjointed. Right now, I can edit the media file through the transcript, right? That's the premise of Descript. But you can see when I click in, there's a cursor. There's the scrubbing timeline indicator, which is that solid blue, what I'll call cursor. And then, of course, we have the underlining of the filler word. We have a timestamp of where that is in the timeline. So it's at the 10-minute, 19-second mark. So we have all of these little elements stuffed into this one little space. And if you use Descript for the audiogram features, you want to clean up the text a little bit. And sometimes you're trying to find the comma, and if you switch to just their correct text mode, now there's a third cursor, it's green, and you're trying to find it. Sometimes it can be a little daunting depending on the complexity of that comma, and I want to remove a space to make this just look right, and I found it pretty challenging. So some elements can be a little daunting, with the UI. And the last con that I have is the audio filters are just not on par with an Adobe Audition or maybe even some other mature programs, rightfully so. There's some pretty easy to use tools. So if I were to highlight, a piece of audio, I can add effects. I can add a compressor effect, an equalizer effect. So we do have these elements that make your audio sound a little bit better. You can do this on a per track basis. So I can go in, I can add some equalizer, I can add some compressor, but that's all it really has in terms of making that audio sound better. Adobe Audition has some amazing background and noise removal, which I use quite often or used quite often before Descript. So it's just not on par there yet. I mean, I know it's going to come, but as of this recording in November of 2020, Descript just is not on that level yet, though I know they're making improvements to get there. Okay, let's talk about the pros of Descript. This is the reasons why I continue to use it and I continue to invest into it. As I said before, its greatest strength, its greatest weakness, editing through the transcript has dramatically changed my workflow for the better. In the beginning, there's a little bit of ramp up. There's that learning curve, but also, when I'm going through and crafting a story, if I'm trying to find the valuable elements that I think a listener wants to hear, editing through the transcript is a game changer, and it's something that I don't know if I could ever go back to just using straight up Audition for many reasons, just from cleaning it up, for creating a more clear, concise storytelling, from creating different different compositions is what they call them. I can go through something here that Corey says. I don't know, I'm just going to grab this paragraph, for example. I can highlight the whole paragraph, right click on it, and clip it to a composition. We'll call it a new composition, and it'll just bring it right in here, and I can work with this. So if I was creating like highlight reels, audiograms, if I wanted to put a composition together of compilations, of like the top things that Corey said in this interview, it's so darn easy, right? And it's very nice and very intuitive for that. Next up is auto removal of words is nice when used accurately. So I said that this was a con, and I think it's a con when you just try to do like this big sweeping auto removal of all changes. What I would really love Descript to add is the ability for me to look to identify a paragraph like this, highlight it, right click on it, and then remove filler words from just this paragraph. So it'll just highlight this moment in time, and then I can go through and remove each one. I would like to do it on a per paragraph basis. And that would make it even more powerful. Though it's still powerful, it allows me to scan and find these things really easily. Next up is I can export these compositions to my favorite tools, right? I can go to Adobe Audition, Adobe Premiere, Final Cut, Pro Tools, and Logic. I can export just the audio. I can export just the text. I really love the export features. When I go and export this into Audition is when I would want to do something more complex with many more tracks. Like I said before, one of the cons is editing tracks and working with tracks is a little bit more difficult in Descript, where it's just a breeze in Audition natively because that's how it's built. So I can export these things to these audio files to Audition or Premiere if I'm doing video. So it does make life a whole heck of a lot easier. When you're exporting to audio, it'll do all of the normalization for you. So you can make the stuff sound decent on the export. You don't have to have all of these other tools. They just make that 20% difference when you're editing audio. You can also publish to Audiograms, which allows you to share these little clips of videos, but they're audio at the same time. It's a nice little add-on for social media, for your marketing, just for creating new content in general. And you can customize it to a degree. They have many different templates that you can choose from. Well, not many. They have a few, but you can choose from that. You can change the accent color. You can upload your own background, which I'll do quite often. You can give it a badge if you have like a logo or something like that. So it does make producing content for all purposes, right? For promoting your podcast, for promoting your content, Descript is forward thinking at that capacity. So it's definitely a nice touch. And actually one of the reasons why I chose Descript to begin with. The next reason why I like Descript is because it is multi-platform. So if I were to take a look at my project screen, we'll go back. This is just for one of my podcasts. I can share this, all gets saved to the cloud with your Descript account. And I can run this on my Mac, which I'm doing now. I can run it on my Windows device. And that is, for me anyway, a huge benefit because sometimes I'm not using my laptop. Sometimes I am editing audio or video on my more powerful Windows machine, and I want to be able to access Descript to do this stuff. I just want to generally use my other computer sometimes. So being able to do that and have this shared network of a drive of project folders is awesome. And I love it for that. There's also a feature that I don't use yet because I don't really collaborate with a team, but they have team collaboration where you can work with multiple people on an audio or video project. And I'm sure that is a killer feature for podcasters that have multiple co-hosts, multiple editors, and you just want to create the audio here and just immediately share it with your editing team. I can see that just being the killer feature for using Descript. I don't use it personally because no one's really working on my shows with me, but a fantastic tool. And then the projects can be organized. As crazy as it sounds, or as like simple as it sounds, like being able to create folders and projects and share those projects, that's a killer feature because when you're using Audition, it's all just native to your file system and you're kind of, just using it within that. Sure, there's Adobe Cloud, but I don't know. I don't use that. I don't want to use it. And this is seamless, easy to use, and I find it to work great. The next killer feature, which I don't have set up yet, in fact, as of this recording, I'm still waiting for it to process, is their Overdub feature. I would have to do a whole video on this, independent of this video anyway, just to show it off. But you have to train Descript by recording a script into Descript and then uploading it to their service. And the Overdub feature will allow you to actually type in words that will sound like you. So if you want to fill in words that you're saying within a script, it's just amazing. Like, it's just mind blowing, right? It's going to learn your voice, record your voice, and you just type in a word and the AI just says the word as close to your voice as possible. I'll do another video when my training voice has been uploaded. It's a half an hour of transcript. I'm only halfway through right now, but very powerful and allows you to fix those missteps, those missayings in a conversation. And that could be a killer feature for some people. Next up is it actually has screen recording capabilities. So trying to compete in that ScreenFlow space, very, very far away from a ScreenFlow competitor. This is where I found, so this is a pro, right? If you're looking to do basic screen recordings, I think it's going to work very well for you. If you're trying to do something more complex, if you're doing multi-layers, transitions, text, effects, ScreenFlow, which is amazing for that. I use it to make product demos and like demo videos of text that flies in, many layers of content and media. It is nowhere near the capabilities of ScreenFlow. But for basic screen recording, I can see it working really well. I know they're trying to improve it as well. That's the other pro to using Descript. They're always launching new features. They're trying to make it a killer product. But it's still far off, though I will add it as a pro because you're getting two products in one. You're getting a screen recording, editing software, and you're getting audio and podcasting tools. It's a fantastic, I'll call it a value, right? I think ScreenFlow might be $150 for a license or maybe even more. And then your other tools like Adobe Audition and all these other things, if you're looking in that pro market, they can add up really quick. Or it might be spending $400 or $500. Whereas with Descript, if you're on the pro plan, $360 for the year. So you're definitely saving some money and getting a very competent tool because of it. Okay, now I want to show you just a basic recording, getting audio into Descript and some of the things that you can do to manipulate and edit your podcast episode or audiogram, whatever you're looking to create. So the first thing we'll do is add a audio recording. And you'll see right at the top it says track 1. We'll click on the record settings, make sure that it's set to using the microphone you want. And in this case, I have automatically transcribe recording. Otherwise, you'll just have to take an extra step and transcribe it afterwards. Now, if you're recording like a Zoom call with somebody, you're interviewing somebody for your podcast, Skype, Zoom, whatever you're connected to, as long as it's creating sound coming out of the computer, you can add a track and then switch that track to record the computer audio. So again, like if you don't want to use something like a Zencast or a Squadcast or even the recording tool for Zoom, you can record it directly into Descript, which is fantastic. Makes your life a little bit easier. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to record this track, and let's just give it a go, and you can kind of see it happen in action. Hey everybody, welcome to the Audience Podcast. I'm your host, Matt. Today, Craig has the day off, and I'm going to talk to you all about podcast success. So I'm going to share 5 videos from our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Castos, that are worth your time for watching. We'll talk about creating a great show. We'll talk about some of the tools that I use. We'll talk about improving audio editing, all of that fun stuff in today's episode. And I'll provide the 5 YouTube links in the show notes. Let's dive right in. So that's just a mock sample of a recent episode that I did for the Audience Podcast. And it was talking about those exact 5 videos. And you can see that Descript transcribed the audio as I was going. And you can see the track is right down here. And you can see the transcript right above. So we'll just call this sample track. And if we check the media gallery or media library, you'll see that the file is right here. So that's the actual audio file, 2.7 megabytes, 31 seconds. I can rename this file. So this is something that I'll quite often do is I'll say Matt's intro. And if we take a look, you can see it did fairly well. It says, hey, everybody, but then it puts a period. Welcome to the Audience Podcast. I'm your host, Matt. Today, Craig has a day off. So it did fairly well. I don't see, it's not highlighting any misspellings, although it didn't capture the youtube.com/Castos. It's probably very hard for it to pick up on. But what I can do is correct that text, highlight it, or switch to correct text. I can just come in here like that and add that little change right there. Because what this is, and actually it turned Castos into those that I noticed right there. So if I do back to correct text, and I say Castos that are worth your time. We'll play that back. So let's just put it right here. So I'm going to share 5 videos from our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Castos. So you can see right there, it held on to that part in the audio, youtube.com/Castos. Before, when I edited that, I didn't include those, which is what it transcribed Castos into, and it would have split that in 2, which is very minor in when you're editing stuff. You don't really care about that. But what happens is if you wanted to share this into an audiogram, let's say, so if we go to share, publish, audiogram, you can see right here in the center, it's going to use the text that we have. Let me change it to a different one. And you can see it's going to come right up to this youtube.com/Castos right here. And it's going to hold it right there while I say youtube.com/Castos. Had I left it to those, it would have highlighted youtube.com/ and then those. It just would have looked funky. Little minor things, but these are things that you're editing inside of Descript, and also why it makes Descript, so powerful. So another thing I might do is add in my speaker title there. So I already have it, the label already set up as Matt. And I'm going to add Matt as a speaker. So if you have many speakers, this is a great way to segment the visuals in the track so you can kind of see who's talking, right? So this pink color is me, obviously throughout the duration of this audio file. And then I can highlight the whole thing and add in the effects. Normally what I'll do is I'll just come into the compressor and just pick some of their, their preset ready-made effects. So I'm going to go and click on classic voiceover, and then I might add another effect with the equalizer and add in maybe boxy booth reduction, right? And then we'll play that back. I'm your host, Matt. Today, Craig has the day off, and I'm going to talk to you all about podcast success. So it's doing all of those little elements for you, making it sound pretty good, and then I can always adjust the overall volume or the decibel level of the track if I wanted to. And then that's it. I'd be adding in more audio files from my guest if I had a guest on this particular show. I can add in another track. So if we do track, let's say music, afternoon ride. It's one that I already know. And you can see it places the icon right at the start because that's where I added it in. And you can see that obviously this track is a lot longer than my sample voice right there. So I'm going to grab this. If I were to bring it down like this, fade it in. But then I also want to bring down the audio because I don't want it to be too loud and overpowering. Hey everybody, welcome to the Audience Podcast. Well, you can't even hear it, so let's bring it up a little bit. I'm your host, Matt. Today, Craig has the day off, and I'm going to talk to you all about podcast. So that's success. One way that you can bring in music and overlay it, and able to bring in your intros, your outros, your ad reads, whatever it is, and it's fairly intuitive, fairly straightforward. Once you start doing some more complex things, that's when it can get pretty challenging. But this is just a basic way to get a recording in, getting a track overlaid on top of it. Now I want to just show you how I edit the show, like the approach I take for using Descript on editing a podcast episode. Okay, so let's dive into this example. This is the thought process of how I go about putting together my show in Descript and editing it down on a per podcast basis. I record everything on Zencastr.com, and then I export those audio files, and I dump them into my podcast. What I'll do is I'll go into the media library, add those audio files there, both Matt and Corey. Those are my two guests. I'll then create that sequence that we showed in the other part of this video, and then I'll transcribe this sequence into this composition, right? So this composition is just the Matt and Corey composition. It's the entirety of our podcast. And then I'll go and bring in my intro music and my ad beat, which is just the music that I play in the background of my ads. I'll bring that into the media library. So I'll just gather my resources, make sure they're all there and ready to go. And then I'll record my intro of the podcast and the ad reads, which I do at the top of the show as well, right here in Descript. So I won't make them in Audition or other places. I'll just do it right here in Descript. And just like I showed in the other section of the video, it's the same thing. I hit record, it transcribes it, and boom, it's all right here with, of course, all of the speaker labels. I then drop in the audio or the music tracks, lay those on top, and then I shrink them down in terms of either size and length of that which I need, and then bring down the volume and then fade them, in and out. This one here is a subtle little sound in audio transition. It's like a little swoosh sound as the show starts. From there, what I'm really thinking about as I'm going through my episode is I'll look for all of the places that are those filler words are used a lot. So as I'm literally listening to my episode as I edit, number one, I'm thinking about, does it sound good? Is there a misstep there in conversation? Is there a lot of filler words? And I'll look for visual cues like this. Now, I won't remove them a lot from my guest unless it's really, really bad. But I'll listen to their audio, and sometimes they're trying to make a point. They're trying to answer something that I asked in the previous statement, and I'll look for that. Like, when are they getting to the answer? Is it just all filler text? They're thinking, they're saying, hey, that's a great question. Let me remember when, and I'll just take all that stuff out and just get right to the answer in most cases. So that's what I'm looking for from the filler words part of this Descript app. Again, I don't go through and hit the nuclear button and it just wipes everything out anymore, because it really made that audio sound choppy. Now I'm really looking at it from a visual cue standpoint. The next thing that I'm doing is I'm removing a lot of my side of the conversation and really tightening it up to just the question. So if you're a podcaster, sometimes you're interviewing people you don't know really well, and maybe you're warming them up to a question. You're trying to put it in a particular context that they're going to understand, or something that maybe they've gone through that maybe they're trying to open up to talking about. So I'll go back and look at my side specifically, and then really tighten it up to get down to just the question that I want answered. So I'll look for that in Descript, and that has been one of the biggest godsends of Descript, because now I can see the transcript of that whole ramp up to a question, and I can see the question right in the transcript. Of course, it's already been edited here, but I can really see it, identify it, and then literally select all and then delete the entire ramp up to that question, which has really made my workflow a lot more efficient. And then really the last part of editing for me is this valuable content? Is this part of the story arc? Sometimes I might ask a question and it might just have nothing to do. It might be like, hey, what was your favorite piece of software to use there? And, it sounded good in the moment when I was asking it, or it sounded relevant. And then as I listen to the show and as I take out bits and parts here and there, it's meaningless, right? So I'll just take out that whole section. And again, you can see where I asked the question in the transcript. I can highlight it all and hit delete. It sounds minor, but when you're editing podcasts for a while, anything where you can save seconds is worth literally hours, if not days, throughout the course of a year of editing a podcast. Okay, so the last thing that I'll do is go through the whole podcast episode and pull out something that I think is going to be a great audiogram or shareable quote. So what I'll do is I'll find, and it's generally going to be from the side of my guest. So I'll find something that they said that I thought was really great. And in this episode, Corey talked about growth marketing. But you can see here that what I'll do is I'll go through and select a couple of paragraphs to put this whole thought together. So I can't find the original section where I copied this from, but I would highlight this whole thing, create a new composition out of that, and then I'll switch to the edit or correct text tool, and I'll go through and I'll change all of this stuff up and clean it up, some kind of adding in some kind of, filling in the words or changing the words to make sure that they're accurate, changing punctuation, things like, putting in a colon is not something that Descript is doing, through the transcription. So I'm cleaning it up, making it look good so that when I export it into the video, into the audiogram, like I showed you before, that it just looks great. It looks punctuation, capitalization, the words are all the way that they should appear in a video. And that's the last thing that I'll do. And maybe I'll make one or two of these things and I'll use that, on social media. And then at the end of the day, I'm just exporting it and then uploading it to my host, which is Castos.com, of course, for podcast hosting. So that's the mindset that I take. That's the approach that I take when I'm editing a podcast using Descript. And again, I can bounce between two different machines. If I start working on my laptop, like when I'm downstairs in my house, I come up to my office, I can then edit it on my more powerful Windows machine. It's a fantastic tool. I've been really happy with it. This was a much longer video than I anticipated today. There's a ton of stuff here. I hope you found it valuable. I hope you were able to skip around with the chapters, find the stuff that you're looking for. It's youtube.com/Castos. Thumbs up if you like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you want more. It's a Descript app. Check it out. It's improving every day. I love it. I'm just dying to throw all of my production stuff into an app like this. All right. We'll see you in the next video.